And now I would like to pass on the job of moderator over to Ms. Adriana Dinu, my dear friend, who is the Deputy Director of the Bureau for Policy and Program Support for UNDP. Adriana will be moderating our second panel on forests, inclusive and sustainable economic growth and employment. Adriana, welcome.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Happy World Wildlife Day to everyone. I am delighted to be here with you all to mark this year's World Wildlife Day. Last year, on this day, Yvonne and I were together in the Trusteeship Council chamber at the UN headquarters, moderating the World Wildlife Day with the theme Sustaining All Life on Earth. And the day before that, we both attended an amazing ceremony lighting up the Empire State Building in celebration of wildlife. Yvonne, that was the last event I have attended in person. As I entered, together with the world, the Zoom type of life. COVID-19 has unleashed an unprecedented crisis, with global human development on course to decline for the first time in a generation since we're measuring the Human Development Index. A very recent study of UNDP shows that in a protracted recovery scenario, the total number of extreme poor people in the world could be above 1 billion by 2030. Our 2020 Human Development Report sets out very clearly, no country in the world has achieved very high human development without putting immense strain on the planet. So how did we choose collectively to destroy a rainforest, the most species-rich ecosystem that has ever existed, and replace it with plantations of a single species in order to feed growing human population on other side of the world? And we did this while knowing that healthy ecosystems, healthy forests are a source of sustainable livelihoods, prosperity, and resilience for billions of people worldwide. The pandemic has generated additional risks to the ones that we were already experiencing, and that will result in increase in deforestation and negative impacts on livelihoods unless we take action. So some of the three key fronts where we see those risks are on reverse migration from cities to rural areas and expected return of millions of migrant overseas workers that will not only result in the loss of remittances, but also increase pressure on forests, the social safety net. As trade and supply chains are disrupted, forest-dependent livelihoods and income sources are negatively impacted. We've all witnessed the decline and almost collapse of the ecotourism, of the wildlife-based tourism. Then we're going into weakened law enforcement and the inclination towards deregulation and relaxation of environmental law as part of the efforts to easily promote economic activities. But the COVID-19 pandemic is also a tipping point, and the choices that we collectively take now could take the world in different directions. And we do have an opportunity to invest in a decade of action that not only helps people to recover from COVID-19, but resets the development path of people and planet towards a more fair, more resilient and green future. And healthy forests are essential to building forward better. Today's inspirational speakers will demonstrate through their example and through their leadership just how central forests are for inclusive and sustainable economic growth and employment. To kickstart our discussion, it is my pleasure to introduce a video message from Mr. Albert Lotana Lokasola, founder and president of Sauvage, an NGO based in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais d'abord vous rappeler que le monde traverse actuellement une crise de la biodiversité, mais aussi l'aggravation de la pauvreté dans nos milieux traditionnels. Comme vous le savez, la nature, nos terres et nos forêts ont toujours constitué une réponse à nos problèmes d'existence et de survie. Mais la question qu'on peut se poser actuellement est de savoir qu'est-ce que nous faisons pour que cette conservation de la nature offre à nos communautés des opportunités de croissance économique et d'emploi durable. En ce qui nous concerne, nous, Vie Sauvage, dans la réserve naturelle de Bonobo de Kokolopori et dans le corridor qui l'entoure et que nous appelons la forêt de paix de Bonobo, nous avons réussi à attirer l'attention de la communauté internationale pour nous venir en aide en ce qui concerne le programme de conservation et de développement durable. C'est ainsi que nous avons à Kokolopori une mission scientifique de l'université de Harvard qui est en train d'étudier le comportement des bonobos, qui emploient des gens, payent des salaires et achètent à la communauté, créant ainsi une économie monétaire dans un milieu aussi reculé que le nôtre. En protégeant le bonobo et son écosystème, nous avons réussi à créer 2 collèges, l'Institut supérieur de développement rural de Djolu et l'Institut de technique médicale de Djolu. Les 2 collèges qui travaillent avec nous dans le programme de santé publique et de développement communautaire. C'est autant d'exemples qui montrent qu'en conservant la biodiversité et les écosystèmes, nous pouvons réussir à amener à nos communautés des opportunités d'amélioration de leurs conditions de vie. En ce jour, nous vous invitons à réfléchir, non seulement à réfléchir, mais à partager vos expériences pour que le monde sache comment nous pouvons faire pour amener, grâce à la conservation, des opportunités d'emploi et de croissance économique dans nos communautés. Merci beaucoup.
That was an inspirational message highlighting that conservation and investments in conservation result in multiple sustainable benefits, sustainable development benefits. We heard about investment in public health and education from conservation. Thank you, Albert. Now it is my honor to introduce Mr. Mateus Mutemba, the Director General of the National Administration of the Conservation Areas of Mozambique. Almost 20 years ago, I worked in northern Mozambique in Niassa Reserve, undertaking the first biodiversity survey, and that's the world's largest Mutemba forest. And I have always been impressed by Mozambique's success in including indigenous peoples and local communities in decision-making to reduce human-wildlife conflict and to promote conservation. Director Mutemba, could you share with us some of Mozambique's experience in ensuring that indigenous people and local communities can develop socially and economically, while at the same time conserving your country's unique and globally significant forest ecosystems? Director Mutemba, over to you.
Good afternoon. I wish everyone a happy World Wildlife Day. And thank you, Adriana Dinu, for remembering us of your old days in Neasa. I will start my conversation here by addressing some aspects of our forestry and wildlife system, in addressing first briefly the framework for the conservation areas that we have. I'll briefly describe our network, and then also very quickly talk a bit about the legal framework and the ways in which we are organized to make sustainable extraction of those resources, being them forest resources, but also fauna. We'll then discuss a little bit on the benefits that accrue from this sustainable use, and also address the social and economic impacts of the use of fauna and flora in a sustainable fashion in Mozambique. Next, please. As you can see in the next slide, Mozambique has a total area of 800,000 square kilometers, of which 25% are devoted to protected areas. So the whole network, including total protection areas, national parks, reserves, and other forms of sustainable use areas, make up 25% of the country. I would like to specifically make reference to the sustainable use areas that we have in our network, because those, apart from areas of public domain, include also private domain, but equally community-based public domain. And this comes from legislation that we approved in 2014, in which community conservation areas as a concept were introduced. So if we could move to the previous slide, I would like to briefly, next, please. I would like to briefly illustrate what we have in terms of coverage of native, terrestrial, and productive forest in Mozambique, which surrounds 32 million hectares. And this is one of the most important sources from which our people derive timber and non-timber forest products, but also use them as a source of ecosystem services. On the coastline, we have a coastline of 2,700 kilometers, in which a coverage of native mangrove forest is of about 305,400 hectares. This is also an area where we have an enormous potential for mangrove carbon sequestration, yet it is an area that we need to unlock, this potential that we need to unlock. Moving into the legal framework, which is next, slide please. Regulating the use of forest fauna and flora, we have a diversified set of laws ranging from the forestry and wildlife law, fisheries, and others. But I would like to just make a comment on 2014 change that we had in our legal framework. This one includes penalization of wildlife-related offenses. Prior to that, in Mozambique, most of these offenses were treated with fines. So what happens with this penal code and the subsequent conservation law that was approved in 2014 and subsequently amended in 2017, there was a severe criminalization of poaching and illegal trade of all wild species. Now in Mozambique, you can face a jail sentence that can go up to 16 years in jail if you are involved in illegal wildlife trade or poaching, especially if it includes species. I would not comment this without putting an emphasis on this legal framework that we have. It is a framework that, apart from increasing penalization in this regard, also promotes inclusivity, participation, and highlights the customary rights of our people, especially those that have to do with land tenure. And so I would briefly say that we do have an enabling framework for sustainable use of natural resources, and especially paying attention to the communities that live around protected areas and in the rural settings of our country. How are we organized to make a sustainable use of these resources? Next, please. One of the ways in which we do extraction of resources is sports hunting, and also the sustainable use of the forest for different purposes. And this is all regulated, and the quota setting comes through the gazettement of ministerial diploma that is issued by the minister that is responsible for land and environment. And also the site is listed and non-site species are part of this quota. Moving into the impacts of this sustainable use of fauna and forestry, I would just state that apart from, next please, apart from generating jobs, next, this is a transition only, yes, thank you. So apart from generating direct jobs and opportunities in expanding social services such as water supply, schools, and other benefits, these activities generate a meaningful contribution in terms of 20% of the revenues that are shared with those communities that live around the protected areas. And this applies equally to the use of fauna through sports hunting, but also through the use of forest, as we'll see in the next slide, please. So just to give you an instance, what in 2019 season, we shared with the communities, we returned to them nearly $1 million US, say 917,450,000 US dollars in revenues that were shared with communities. So I would stop here with this introduction on how we organized and how we derive benefits from sustainable use of fauna and flora. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Mutemba, for sharing those insights from Mozambique and for specifically highlighting the legal framework and the customary rights and the benefits accruing directly to the local communities. So thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Emmanuela Shinta, founder and executive director of the Ranu Welum Foundation in Indonesia. The foundation was founded in 2014 and is now globally known for its Youth Act Green movement in ecological disaster relief efforts and forest restoration. It is also known for its indigenous film festivals, which use storytelling to address the indigenous rights. Ms. Emmanuela Shinta, could you tell us more about your foundation and its efforts to restore forests?
Hi, sure. Thank you, Adriana. Adil Katalino, Bacuramin Kasaruga, Basengat Kajubata, Arus, Arus, Arus. Selamat Panalu Matakam Katulu, greetings from Kalimantan. My name is Emmanuela Shinta. I belong to Dayak Manyan tribe, the first people of the Borneo Island, and I live in central Kalimantan, which is Kalimantan is the part of the Borneo that belong to Indonesia. And I was born in Kalimantan, grew up in Kalimantan, and still here in Kalimantan. And yeah, just want to show you a glimpse about my homeland. I need to show one picture. So Kalimantan is such a very beautiful island with beautiful forests, lush forests, and a beautiful tradition, culture, and also beautiful people. And my organization, Ranu Welum Foundations, actually come from Dayak language. It means living water. So Ranu Welum is an indigenous initiative that combines modern technology and indigenous wisdoms to preserve the culture, protect the forest, and also to fight for indigenous rights. So I will just start with the main reason and the very reason why we started this indigenous initiative. Because of this, I need to show the second picture. Right, this is what happened in my homeland. So can you imagine how we feel here when your own homes turn from the green one into ashes or even like burning blaze like this? So this picture is taken by my friend Bjorn Found, and it happened, this picture was taken in 2015, and that's exactly where I live. Thank you. So, you know, like that's how everything started. Like these forest fires in our place not only happened like 1 year or 2 years, but since 1997. Not mentioning about how many forests and peatland that being burned and how actually it continue like every year since 97 till today. And also not mentioning about how many biodiversity and animals and wildlife being burned alive in the forest, and how children and babies and elders die because of such poisonous air that produced by these forest fires. That's what happened here. So seeing my own home burning, and you know, I experienced myself breathing in such poisonous air where the air pollution is equal to 672 cigarettes a day. Can you imagine that? Experiencing that, you know, like I believe and I realized that environmental battle cannot be won only by talking. We need an immediate actions. So that's how we started with this my Dayak youth fellows here in Kalimantan. We start to mobilize young people here to take actions, the real actions on the ground to protect our home, to protect our people, to protect our families. And through this youth act movement under our organization, the Welum Foundation, so we formed this youth firefighters team, you know, like like in 2019 they found like about over 30,000 fire spots in Kalimantan. So this is a huge work actually, but anyway, like we have these fires inside us, like we have to do it now, otherwise you would die here. And not only firefighter team, we also built the hay shelter. I mentioned previously about the air pollution situation here. Babies and elders, they were very affected by the haze, by the poisonous air. So we built this haze shelter where people can evacuate themselves during the haze season, because it happens every year. And we also conducted this online petition. It's climate justice for Kalimantan, and also did this offline protests to the local government, of course, and also to the central government in Jakarta. And not to mention that above of all, like we need to restore the forest, because we lost that. Like every green things turn into the ashes. So we run this tree planting program to restore the ecosystem and the forest in Central Kalimantan. So in our works, in Ranu Welum Foundation, we emphasize indigenous youth leadership in the process, like learning from the elders and then pass it to the next generations. That's the key in our movement. That's the energy in our movement. And I haven't mentioned, like, forest fire is not the only challenge that we have, because there is a massive deforestation and also environmental destruction that happen here. Like lastly, also we face this flood and landslides in Kalimantan, which never happened before. That's the first time ever happened in like last 40 years. So I will say, like, we do what we can do to survive in this middle of massive deforestation and environmental destructions. But for us, the most challenging part is this. When the outsiders see forests, they see money, they see economic value, and they count the country's loss because of the forest fires. But for us, as a Dayak people, we see it a different way. Like, we see forests, we see life. We see forests, we see the connection to our ancestors. That's a part of our identity. And the Dayak is not Dayak without forests. That makes our work here becomes like more significant and more urgent. And like, I'm very honored to be invited and share in this talk. And I believe the people that watch this live streaming, all like very high level people and smart and smarter than me. I'm only an ordinary girl from Kalimantan, but now I don't want to teach your head, but I want to touch your heart, actually. And it's very important to let you know, while I'm speaking to you right now from Kalimantan, my people right now experience these fire spots. Like, the fire spots already appear everywhere, and the air pollution has been getting worse. So this message is very important for us when we talk about how actually indigenous people, like being the guardians of the forest. Indigenous communities are at the front line of environmental battle. Like, we can have these thousands webinars and talk, but still cannot save even an inch of the forest, right? So I will say, please reach out to the indigenous communities. Please reach out to us, speak to us, listen to us. Not as, like, as a superiority, like organizations, or why we want to help you because you're vulnerable and you're pitiful, you're suffering there, down there. No, but in equal partnership, because indigenous communities are more than an object of a green project. And I will say, we, the indigenous communities here, we, the Dayak, are the main actors in our collective effort to make sure that the forests are still there and to save all this wildlife. I think that's all what I can say. Thank you so much for the time.
Emmanuela, what can I say? There's nothing more for me to say on this, because we as humanity, we have been struggling with an inability to translate our emotions into action. We somehow deeply care for nature, but we have not collectivized that care in a ways that are sufficient to tackle the systemic challenges we face. But you have managed to do that, translate those emotions into action. So I really want to thank you for sharing with us the critical role of translating that fire, fighting fire with fire, translating that fire and that passion into really conserving the forests and ensuring the rights and well-being of the future generations. It has been an honor for all of us to listen to you. So thank you. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Ewald Rametsteiner, the Deputy Director of the Forestry Division of the Food and Agriculture Organization. UNDP and the FAO are working very closely together on forests and sustainable development issues, and we are very privileged to be part of this partnership. Could you share with us some insights from the work of the FAO Forestry Division, including the link between forest conservation, agriculture, employment, and inclusive growth? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you indeed, Adriana, for the invite. It's a great pleasure to be here on this exciting event. And Emmanuela, you have really brought so many points to the forefront that just is at the core of things. How do we fight against biodiversity loss with the people at the same time? When the Director General, Secretary General of the UN opened today, he pointed to the importance of forests for biodiversity. He also pointed out, just as you, Emmanuela, just now, the importance of forests to people. And the same was echoed by the Executive Secretary of the CBD in her address, pointing to agriculture as one of the main drivers. Some of it is causing fires sometime. And we see that this is not ending up where we want. But many of those things happen not because people are necessarily always bad. So many things happen because people want to find a way out to escape poverty and hunger. And that's the goal of the Sustainable Development Goal. It's goal number 1 and number 2. The role for us is, in a way, how do we find ways to link the biodiversity loss fight with the link to fight against hunger and poverty at the same time. And as you just said, for Kalimantan, how do we do that with the people? And your groups and so many groups are exactly those people that are at the threat of being left behind. So you need to benefit and you need to be part of this and lead many of those. But I think the good news is that there are quite many ways of how this can be done. And if it comes to biodiversity loss, I see 3 action areas that really would help stop that. The first one was just mentioned before, the halting deforestation. And great that you pointed out, Adriana, because you're part of this, great work that we do together in supporting more than 80 countries on reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation. And we're also co-leading and working on the UN initiative by the Secretary General on turning the tide on deforestation. And I think these initiatives, they really have the potential to unlock climate finance for nature-based solution at large scale, and working with stakeholders and working across this main boundary and link between agriculture and forestry. I give you one example, the Relive initiative in Guatemala, which is focusing on agroforestry and market development, assisting 100,000 small farmers, almost half of them women, in one country alone. So if you can reach that number of farmers with new ways of making a living, building their own economic sustainability and helping biodiversity grow, that's a success. Halting deforestation is one. Enhancing restoration is another. If you have seen this picture of fire, which is really a major issue that we face almost every year now. Also here we work with other UN agencies on a decade on ecosystem restoration, which will be launched at the World Environment Day this year in June. It's actually hosted by Pakistan, a country which is undertaking decisive restoration action, which provides tens of thousands of jobs already in rural areas, also connected to a topic that you mentioned at the beginning, Adriana, COVID. Also in Africa, the Great Green Wall Initiative seeks to restore 100 million hectares and create 10 million green jobs in the process. Most of them, if not all, in rural areas with local communities. And this is again done by making landscapes more productive for people who live there and live from the land, by at the same time making it more biodiverse. And the third area that difference in terms of stopping biodiversity loss is overexploitation. We've heard in some of the interventions before, one issue is the overexploitation of wildlife. Also something that the Distinguished Director General of Mozambique pointed to. We have a sustainable wildlife management program jointly with partners supporting 13 African and Caribbean Pacific countries to improve hunting management, especially by indigenous and local communities who rely on wildlife for food. So we cannot and do not want to take this away, but we can replace it by ways and means to diversify sources of sustainably produced meat, poultry, fish, and others, and also to reduce demand for wild meat, particularly in cities that drives quite a bit of the demand nowadays. And the other one is the overexploitation and the illegal exploitation of timber, where we have programs such as the Forest Law Enforcement, Governance and Trade. They make step-by-step progress on not only cutting illegal logging, but one that we hope will build a new future, a better future, a future based on legal and sustainable products, value chains, and also businesses, especially local businesses. So the one elephant that has now entered the room recently, and that also in a way connects these areas of focused action that we need get going, just mentioned, is the COVID-19 pandemic, because in some ways, all of these are connected to those issues that we want to stop. And somebody has already mentioned that around 70% of the emerging infectious diseases have their original in the livestock and wildlife. And if we want to address such pandemics at source, we need to prevent ecosystem destruction to happen. So what a lot of governments nowadays are focused on are green recovery programs. And some countries include actions such as the ones I just pointed out. They see the potential of linking forests, which is also a fight against a number of crises, the health crisis, the climate crisis, but also, and particularly relevant today, the biodiversity crisis, with a perspective of inclusive and sustainable economic growth and employment. And with that, they would, and such programs do, rebuild the resilience of both ecosystems and of local communities to build back a better, or if you say, as you said at the beginning, build back forward a better world. And that is what we need to do now, building back that world with nature and with people. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today. It's such a massively important topic, and great to hear all these good contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ewald, for those highlights from the innovative work led by FAO, but also emphasizing the role of avoiding deforestation, halting deforestation, protecting intact forests and healthy forests, but also where that already happened, highlighting the role of restoration and sustainable use of both fauna and flora. So thank you so much for that. It is my pleasure now to give the floor to Ms. Cindy Squires, the Executive Director of the International Wood Products Association. Your association represents companies and trade organizations engaged in the import and use of wood from sustainably managed forests in over 30 countries. Can you tell us more about the work of the association and the link between the forest conservation and opportunities for inclusive economic growth? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dinu, for your kind introduction, and happy World Wildlife Day to all. IWPA is the leading international trade association for the North American international wood products industry and includes every segment of the global wood supply chain, from producers to importers, distributors, manufacturers, and retailers. Our mission is to build acceptance and demand in North America for globally sourced wood products from sustainably managed forests. We know that if land is not serving the economic needs of its community, it is at risk for conversion to an activity that will provide those benefits. FAO reported in its 2020 State of the World's Forests that agricultural expansion continues to be the main driver of deforestation and forest fragmentation and the associated loss of forest biodiversity. Conversion of forest lands to large-scale commercial agriculture, cattle, soy, and palm oil accounted for 40% of tropical deforestation between 2000 and 2010, and local subsistence agriculture for another 33%. We need forests to continue to produce economic and ecological value for our communities and for businesses for many generations to come. IWPA is proud of its Wood Trade Compliance Training Program, which was established in partnership with the United States Agency for International Development and the World Resources Institute. IWPA has compliance staff and executives from companies of all sizes in the United States and abroad. These trainings involve specific information on how to comply with CITES and US laws like the Lacey Act that ensure that wood products are from legally and sustainably harvested timber. We also help businesses build for their companies a holistic compliance framework and a sourcing strategy. Increasingly, businesses involved in the timber trade are investing in and developing their suppliers so that the suppliers are able to produce quality product that meets the needs of the market while providing confidence in the supply chain. This work can be very challenging, as many small and medium-sized businesses make up this sector. It is critical to support these small businesses so that communities can have the benefit of sustainable economies and a sustainable ecosystem. This support should include technical assistance and outreach at the local level, while also ensuring that the requirements are understood and, frankly, that compliance is possible. Working forests should work for their community. That work includes designating those forests that are to be sustainably managed to provide for economic benefits for the community, while also ensuring that lands are set aside for preservation and for other community needs. Increasing yields, reducing waste, avoiding the over-reliance on just one or two target high-value species, and developing markets for a variety of species to provide economic benefits to a forest community with a smaller and more diversified footprint. These steps can move us toward a sustainable, inclusive future that includes economic growth and employment. Thank you so much for an opportunity to celebrate World Wildlife Day with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Squires, for sharing those highlights and also sharing a glimpse of the work in terms of markets, in terms of business, and in terms of looking at educating markets for a more diversified type of product to reduce pressure on single, very high level, very high grade species, high value species. So thank you. Now I'm very happy to be informed that we have just enough time for a 1 minute key messages or thought that you want to leave with our audience today on this World Wildlife Day on our efforts to conserve forests, to strengthen livelihoods and inclusive growth. So 1 minute, I'm going to call on each one of you I'm going to, so please see when you are unmuted to respond to that request. So first, I would like to give the floor for Director General Mateus Mutemba. Let's see.
Oh, thank you. I'll quickly say that it has been very rewarding to be part of this panel. And I think some of the things that we retain from this is that participation, ownership, benefit sharing, economic and gender-based empowerment, alongside with the continued awareness amongst the key features of sustainable use and can encourage or contribute for inclusiveness as well in management of natural resources by the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General Mutemba. Now I would like to invite Ms. Emmanuela Shinta.
Yeah, from me is I want to say the message for the policy makers. Please listen to the indigenous communities and listen to the indigenous wisdoms and knowledge, not only involving them as an object, but as the subject of every decisions regarding to the land management. Because it happens in my place right now, under the name of infrastructure, development, and food security, our forests being cleared. And it's not right, it's not okay. So I just want to say this, like, we can walk together in respect and humility and understanding of each other, because we indigenous community, we love our country, we love this earth, and I believe we can achieve what we want together, not by stepping on each other or fighting or conflict, but in unity, in harmony. That's all. Thank you so much, and happy World Wildlife Day from Dayak community.
Thank you very much, Emmanuela. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ewald, the Rametsteiner.
Thank you. I had to unmute. I get to the microphone. I would say the COVID-19 crisis is really, in a way, a reckoning. It is also an opportunity to rethink how we work with nature. And in the wake of this, there will be quite a bit of thinking of how to best invest and build back. And here I believe one of the key things is to make sure that people hear, those that make decisions about the role of forests, and that every dollar that is wisely invested in forests pays back at least 3 times. One is for biodiversity, the other one is for averting a climate crisis, and then certainly and importantly for this panel and for reality, for getting people out from poverty in decent lives, also not only economically, but also culturally and spiritually in the social realities they want to live in. And also from my side, happy World Wildlife Day to everybody.
Thank you so much, Ewald. Now, Ms. Cindy Squires.
Thank you. I'm very excited to hear all the panelists today really bring out, I think, many of the themes that are so critical. I think we need everyone at the table. We need everyone's views. We need to have buy-in on those local communities to what those resources are going to be used for. And they should be a part of that conversation. It should not be environmental colonialism, if you will. It is their resource. It is their loss that we must be there to respect. And I think it's important that we have a conversation that is not just about risk, and that we also think about opportunity. I fear sometimes that we talk so much about the risk that we drive the best actors away from those regions. They won't trade because they're worried there may be risk, but it's those folks that we want in there engaging in partnership. And it's not easy. It's just not easy. It's harder. It takes longer. The process is more difficult when everyone's at the table. Everyone has to get up to speed. They have to be ready to participate. And that includes not just civil society and not just government, but also those businesses. Because if they have buy-in, if everyone has buy-in to the solution, then we can get somewhere. And so to me, that would be the future I would like to see, especially as we step out of COVID, we actually get to be together again and really start working on these problems on a more holistic level.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you so much to all panelists. We know, and as you also said, Cindy, even though human activities are at the root of our descent into chaos, human action also can help solve it. So how are we making peace with nature? And ultimately, as we heard from each one of you, this is a moral test. We cannot use our resources to lock in policies that burden with a mountain of debt on a broken planet, as Secretary General said the other day. So today, what is our responsibility and how do we accept it and how do we act on it? And I think we heard from each one of you today that we need the courage and the spirit to choose to lead. And because how we lead, regardless of where we are, if we are an indigenous community, if we are working in the private sector, if we are working in the government, multilateralism, anywhere, how we lead is our choice. And it's leaping into that possibility for a different way of leading, connecting the heart, connecting the mind, connecting the hand. So that's why I am here for. I really hope that you, and you demonstrated that, you are here for the same thing. So happy World Wildlife Day. Thank you.